Cardinal Robert McElroy was appointed 8th Archbishop of Washington, D.C. on January 6, 2025. It's arguably the most important see in the United States, a see that places him at the forefront of public life, interacting with media, lawmakers, politicians, the president, some of the most powerful people in the world, here and abroad. But who is Cardinal McElroy? How did he move so quickly from being a relative unknown not too long ago to now becoming a major political player in the church and the world? Now, this isn't meant to be an exhaustive report, but presented in a concise and shareable format, hitting on all the major points. A list of resources for further research can be found in the description beneath this video. The first thing to know about Cardinal McElroy is that he's widely considered one of the most liberal bishops in the U.S., vocal on LGBTQ rights, while downplaying the issue of abortion in favor of climate change or mass immigration. His first public statement after being installed as head of Washington, D.C., was to criticize President Donald Trump, characterizing Trump's dismantling of USAID as moral theft. McElroy also blasted Trump's deportation of violent migrant criminals, likening it to a crusade which comes from the darkest parts of our American psyche and soul in history. It's especially alarming that as a Catholic bishop, tasked with upholding the timeless teachings of the Church, McElroy has minimized the evils of abortion, which the Church teaches is an intrinsic evil, instead claiming that climate change is a more pressing issue. He was also among a small minority of bishops in 2023 who opposed the idea of inserting language in the Catholic Voters Guide, clarifying that abortion is the preeminent priority in voting.
It is not Catholic teaching that abortion is the preeminent issue that we face as a world in Catholic social teaching. It is not.
Other bishops pushed back, and McElroy and his circle were outvoted 225 to 11, and the clause was added to the Voters Guide. In a 2020 interview, McElroy again downplayed abortion, preferring instead to focus on, once again, climate change, saying, "Look at climate change, which threatens to end the whole of humanity. Look at the divisions we have in our nation now in terms of race and class, the undocumented." What's more, McElroy has heavily promoted LGBTQ ideology, receiving a glowing report from Outreach, a dissenting Catholic LGBTQ resource, which characterized him as one of the most vocal proponents among the U.S. hierarchy of LGBTQ inclusion in the Catholic Church. In another example of downplaying Catholic teaching, McElroy has minimized the call to chastity. In 2017, America Magazine, edited by dissenting Jesuit Father James Martin.
Hi, I'm Father Jim Martin. I'm a Jesuit priest and editor at...
who's done more to normalize homosexuality and transgenderism in the U.S. Church than perhaps any other priest, published a self-serving article by McElroy titled, "Attacks on Father James Martin Expose a Cancer Within the U.S. Catholic Church." While the Church unequivocally teaches that sex is only permissible within marriage between a man and a woman, McElroy downplayed the teaching, writing, "But chastity is not the central virtue in the Christian moral life. Our central call is to love the Lord our God with all our heart and to love our neighbor as ourselves. Many times our discussions in the life of the Church suggest that chastity has a singularly powerful role in determining our moral character or our relationship with God. It does not." McElroy himself has admitted that his pro-LGBTQ push began as a young priest in San Francisco. His hometown, where he was born, and where he quickly rose through the ranks to serve as secretary to the progressive Archbishop John Quinn.
That's, I think, a very key biographical fact about McElroy is that he was a protege of Archbishop John Quinn. He was ordained under Quinn in 1980, and then he rose to become one of Quinn's chief AIDS. And the importance of Quinn is that he was an ultra-modernist bishop. He was very much connected to the gay mafia. In fact, Cardinal Blase Supich is another protege of Quinn's. So McElroy was a spokesman for Quinn and a theologian for Quinn. And in 1992, the Vatican, under Pope John Paul II and Joseph Ratzinger at the Congregation for the Doctrine of the Faith, the Vatican issued a letter saying that civil rights should not be extended to homosexuals in a blanket way, and that it was perfectly legitimate for gay adoption agencies, for example, for adoption agencies not to give gay couples children. And the letter opposed the application of civil rights to homosexuals with respect to domestic partnerships and the like. So after that letter came out, Robert McElroy, speaking for John Quinn, told the San Francisco Chronicle that the Archdiocese of San Francisco did not consider that Vatican letter to be binding on them. And McElroy, and anybody can look this up, and there's a San Francisco Chronicle article with the title, SF Archdiocese will not acknowledge Vatican letter on gay bias law, or something like that. So the point of this is that McElroy was part of this sort of culture of homosexual normalization within the church, and a culture that was clearly subverting and undermining the church's teaching on the sinfulness of homosexuality. So he was with Quinn on all of that.
Quinn was a leading figure in the church at the time and served as president of the U.S. Bishops' Conference from 1977 to 1980. He published a controversial book pushing for a more decentralized church, where individual bishops took on a greater role while Rome stepped back.
Jesuit historian John O'Malley writes, "In the first millennium, popes did not run the church, nor did they claim to run the church."
In 2012, he by chance ran into Argentine Cardinal Jorge Bergoglio, who told Quinn he had read his book with interest and that he hoped the church would adopt his ideas. The next year, Bergoglio would be elected pope and would go on to implement one of his most notable reforms, synodality, a more decentralized church based, no doubt, on Quinn's early ideas. Years later, Quinn's apprentice McElroy would be at the forefront of implementing Pope Francis's synodal agenda in the U.S. Church.
And so what I would like to suggest Archbishop Bergoglio to consider is having a task force that he appoints for implementation of synodality.
It all comes full circle. Quinn was a vocal proponent of LGBTQ ideology. He opposed California's Proposition 6, which banned promotion of homosexuality in public schools, among other things. He framed it as a civil rights issue. And from an April 2024 article in Harvard Magazine, as early as 1983, Quinn reached out to gay Catholics and supported a Castro neighborhood parish that held vigils for HIV-positive parishioners and their caregivers. That neighborhood parish is Holy Redeemer Catholic Church in San Francisco, the nation's most notorious LGBTQ church, home to, among others, the Sisters of Perpetual Indulgence, a group of transvestite drag queens who mock Christ at public events. The sisters were in the news in 2023 after the LA Dodgers Stadium chose to honor them on Pride Night, leading to tens of thousands of Christians marching in protest. McElroy openly admits he took after his mentor. We haven't yet touched on McElroy's flouting of Canon 915 of the Code of Canon Law in his rationalizing of notorious pro-abortion politicians receiving Holy Communion. But these few examples suffice to show McElroy's compromised theology and politics. We asked earlier about McElroy's swift rise to power. The key to understanding that question is Cardinal Theodore McCarrick. The notorious cardinal laicized in recent years after it was exposed he was a serial sexual predator of boys and young men. While McCarrick has already passed on to his eternal fate, his legacy on earth continues. In 2018, former Papal Nuncio Archbishop Carlo Maria Vigano released a bombshell report revealing a corrupt network of clergy in the church, all connected in some way to McCarrick. McCarrick was considered the most powerful cardinal in the U.S. church in the early 2000s, when he reigned in Washington, D.C. from 2001 to 2006. During that time, McCarrick was considered kingmaker. How so? The Pope relies on the papal nuncio of each country to supply names of clergy recommended to be promoted to bishop or to cardinal. Thus, Vigano would have referred names to the Holy See for advancement. But here's what he wrote about McElroy's 2015 move to California. The appointment of McElroy in San Diego was also orchestrated from above, with an encrypted peremptory order to me as nuncio by Vatican Secretary of State Cardinal Pietro Parolin. Reserve the See of San Diego for McElroy. The understanding was that it was McCarrick who had made the recommendation to Pope Francis. Vigano went on to make a significant claim. McElroy was also well aware of McCarrick's abuses, as can be seen from a letter sent to him by Richard Sipe on July 28, 2016. Dr. Sipe, the late sex abuse expert, had hand-delivered a letter to then-Bishop McElroy detailing alleged sexual assaults by McCarrick against seminarians and clergy. McElroy's response? To ignore the letter and refuse to meet with Sipe. After the news circulated in 2018 and public criticism of McElroy ensued, he responded by claiming they were simply rumors about McCarrick at the time, which is why he didn't respond. But according to Bishop Stephen Lopes, head of the Anglican Ordinariate, everyone knew about McCarrick. Everyone.
It's the parade of cardinals and bishops who have rushed to the television cameras, clutching their pectoral crosses, saying, "I knew nothing." I don't believe it, and I am one of them. I don't believe it. Because as one of the youngest bishops in the conference, you do get an interesting perspective. Like for the fact that I was a seminarian when Theodore McCarrick was named Archbishop of Newark, and he would visit the seminary often, and we all knew.
We'll leave it up to viewers to decide whether McElroy is telling the truth. In any case, McElroy has been accused of protecting a sexual predator who would later go on to plead guilty to rape.
I am Father Jacob Bertrand, and this is the revolution.
In short, Vigano, speaking on behalf of Pope Francis, announced McElroy's appointment to San Diego on March 3, 2015. 3 weeks later, on March 29, 2015, Father Jacob Bertrand was reinstated to public ministry in San Diego. The year before, in 2014, Bertrand was accused of ritual rape of a young adult woman in his spiritual care.
And so here we are right in front of the image of the Sacred Heart of Jesus. And Bertrand looks to me and he says, do you trust me? And so right there in front of Jesus, the image of Jesus in his Sacred Heart, I said, yes, I trust you. And that was the beginning of him starting to touch me.
Bishop of San Diego.
On those allegations, the previous bishop, Cyril of Flores, had taken Bertrand out of ministry.
More breaking news, the death of Bishop Cyrilo Flores after a short battle with cancer.
Flores passed away in September of that year, leaving the vacancy that McElroy would go on to fill. McElroy's defenders claim that he hadn't yet been formally installed as bishop in San Diego until April 2015. Thus, he can't be blamed for reinstating Bertrand. But McElroy's appointment was announced March 3rd, fully 3 weeks before Bertrand's reinstatement. Recall, at the time, there was no bishop in San Diego because the former bishop had died. It beggars belief that the chancellor, who was at that time administrator of the diocese, would have taken such a controversial step as to reinstate an accused sexual predator facing potentially criminal accusations without at least consulting with the incoming bishop and getting his approval. In any case, we contacted the San Diego Diocese in 2022, asking McElroy to explain why he reinstated Bertrand. The email we received from spokesman Kevin Eckery never denied that McElroy reinstated him. In fact, Eckery refused to defend McElroy. Imagine a diocesan spokesman refusing to defend his own bishop. Instead, writing, Jacob Bertrand was removed from ministry by the diocese and later laicized. We played no role and did not assist in his criminal defense. Beyond that, there's little more I can say. And what critics remain unable to explain is why McElroy left Bertrand in public ministry for many months after McElroy was formally installed in San Diego, removing him only once the prosecutor brought formal criminal charges against him in 2015, charges that would result in a guilty plea for rape and Bertrand's eventual laicization. So in this, at least, McElroy seems to have something in common with his predecessor McCarrick in D.C. For more details, including police reports, court documents, diocesan files, and eyewitness testimony, please watch our in-depth special report, The Devil in Rome, which can be found at stellamaris.media.
I do accept the pastoral care of the people of God in the Archdiocese of Washington. I resolve to serve faithfully the spiritual needs of this beautiful local church.
Thanks be to God.
McElroy's surprise appointment to Washington, D.C. caused controversy. While Cardinal Robert Prevost, now Pope Leo XIV, headed the dicastery for bishops at the time, it's unclear what role, if any, he played in that appointment. Sources say, rather, that it was Cardinal Blaise Cupich of Chicago, Illinois, and Cardinal Joseph Tobin of Newark, New Jersey, who fiercely lobbied on McElroy's behalf, bypassing the usual channels and going directly to Pope Francis. The late pontiff evidently agreed. Pray for our nation. Pray for the church. Pray especially that our Holy Father would have the wisdom, courage, and strength to do what is necessary to reform and purify Holy Mother Church. I'm Christine Niles for Stella Maris Media.